Okay, why don't we get started? So, we are in week 5 and just finished with input. A couple of different ways to input. One was with the scanner, the other one was with the buffered reader. Catching exceptions. Exception was basically anything that, or an error that happens while your program is running. There were some examples of this in the previous week, and what we're going to do this week is selection. Okay, and if you have done selection in C++, it's pretty much the same exact thing in Java. If you've done selection in Python, it's pretty much the same thing in Java, but the syntax is slightly different. Okay, the syntax is exactly the same as the C++ though. So let's have a look at this thing and tell you what's what. First of all, I have a batch file, or how to make a batch file. This is only for Windows. I need to fix it so that it works for Mac and Linux as well. But basically a batch file allows you to run your program. So it's basically what you do is you create a file, like you open a text editor and you create a file with the following things in it, right? So you just write javac, the %1.java, right? And let's say you're going to create a text file, you're going to save that text file as compile.bat, that's the batch file. And the purpose of this thing now is that if you ever want to compile and run your program with one command, you can just type compile hello world, okay, when in the command line. If you do compile hello world, then the hello world file name will be inserted inside of the batch file wherever this %1 is. So what the actual file will do is it will execute both of these commands. It will compile and then it will run the program using just a single line. Okay, so that's just a little something for you, a little extra something if you want to know how to do these things more efficiently in the command line. The other thing that I'm going to start doing today is I'm just going to start using Eclipse because I'm kind of tired of typing things in the command line. So we're at chapter 5. I'm assuming that during the first 4 chapters you got comfortable with using the terminal or the command line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Eclipse. Okay, so first of all, where do you get Eclipse? I'll Google Eclipse, and there's eclipse.org. Look at the downloads and download yourself this one right here, Eclipse IDE for Java developers. You don't need this one. This one's for enterprise developers, so we're not going to do any enterprise programming here. We're just going to do basic Java programs. So you download this thing here. I'm not really sure. It's the latest version is Oxygen. They keep calling them different names, right? There was one Eclipse before that. There's Neon, Mars, Luna, Kepler, whatever. Who cares, right? Just get the latest one, Eclipse IDE for Java developers, and it's available in all operating systems. So whatever you have a Windows, download the Windows Eclipse. Okay. So once this thing is downloaded, it's just going to be a zip file. You unzip the file, open it up in a folder, and then just run Eclipse. Okay, and this is Eclipse. Okay, might look a little fancier to you than a basic text editor, and it is. So what you want to do is you're going to create a new project. So let me just go in there. I'm going to do File, New, Java Project. Right, so I'll just start this thing, right? So let's call this sample project. Okay, so that's my sample project. I'm going to leave everything default, right? I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to go next and finish, right? So I guess you can just hit the finish button right off the bat. Name the project, hit the finish button. Okay, when you do that, that creates a sample project. Okay. And what you can do is you can open up your files, whatever file was that you're trying to open up in Eclipse, and you can just drag and drop it right into your project. All right, let me see if that works. So it's asking me, do I want to copy the file? Yeah, I want to copy the file. and I'll add it to the source here. I think, let me try to move this. Okay, yeah. So you want to drag this thing inside your source folder. Okay. Another way to do this is I'm just going to erase it, delete this file. All right. And if you want to create a file from scratch, try to delete this thing too. No, there, I'll leave the default package. You need that thing. Okay, so you click on the project, you go File, New, Class File, and let's say, I don't know, what's my name of my file? What's the one that I had? Let's say this is scanner input. All right, so I'm going to name this file right here, name scanner input. And you can tell Eclipse to generate a main for you if you want. Let's just try to see what that does. If I hit the finish button, there it is, right? It creates the whole thing for you, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my little thing here, open this, copy all my content, and I'm going to just select all and paste this stuff in there. Okay, so there you go. That's one way to do it. Another way to do this is, like I showed you, basically just drag and drop this thing right on top of your source file inside of your source folder. Let's see if that works. Drop it in there. Okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, so either drag and drop the files on top of your source folder, or you create a new file, new, class, and that's it. Okay, so that is one thing. There you go. Okay, so the neat thing about Eclipse is it will highlight things for you, right? So for example, let's say I didn't have this thing here, right? Or it will offer fixes for you. Okay, so let's say, for example, I forgot to import my scanner, and I need to use the scanner for, to read some numbers from the keyboard. Okay, you highlight this thing, or you mouse over it in Eclipse, and it'll tell you, oh wait, you can import scanner. Hit the little thing, and it imports scanner for you. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so yeah, it kind of does your work quite a bit, which is why I wanted you to learn how to use the command line, learn how to do it from scratch instead of relying on this thing to aid you. All right, so to run these things, all right, I have some kind of a class scanner input. I'm going to go click this. I'm going to select run configuration, and I'm going to choose the project that I want to. So this is my sample project. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to have to select the class where the main is located. So this class was the scanner input class, and there was a class called scanner input. So I'm going to look for that thing. I'm going to hit search, and there's my scanner input, and I say OK. And then I can say apply and run. Okay, so now that that thing is selected, now I can run the program, and the program is going to run right here on the bottom. Okay, so that's it. You don't need to deal with the command line anymore if you don't want to. So that's what I'm going to be doing. All right, so first of all, what was this? Well, this was the program that we were looking at last time, which was how to enter information in using the keyboard. Okay, I'm going to erase all of this stuff, and what I'm going to use is just the integer part. Okay, and by the way, that's called input, if you forgot, right? Input is information that goes into the program. I'm going to erase all this stuff here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make our programs appear to make decisions. Well, they are going to decide between different things. And before I do that, I guess let's have an example here. So if I wanted to, let me stop the program right here. There's like a little red button. Press that thing, and then the program stops. Okay, I can close the console, and I'm going to run the program again. Actually, let me just change this thing to like age. I'm going to go with my age example. There you go. Okay, so let's say I have an age, and then I have a couple of Now system out println, right? And a couple of messages like you are under 18. All right, I'm gonna get that whole thing. And maybe you are over 18. And then maybe another one, you are 18. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run my program. And please enter an integer. Maybe I should change this. Please enter an age. All right. Let me run it again. So age 99. Okay, and what it does is it shows me all three messages because that's what it does. Okay, but we want to select only one of these three messages. And how we're going to do that? We're going to select it using ifs. So it goes like this. I'm going to say if my age is less than 18, I can do curly brackets. And notice how Eclipse actually inserts the curly brackets, the second curly bracket for me. It also works with indentation for me. So that will be the first one. Then I have if age is greater than 18, I'm going to do another curly brackets, throw that inside of my if. All right, and the last one is if my age is equal to 18, then I'm going to do another curly brackets and put the thing in it. Okay, so these are the if is selection, right? Selection. All right. So you can use if, you can use an else if, you can use an else, just like the C++ syntax.
Could you use an else on the last one?
What's that?
On the last one, could you use an else?
I could. I will.
Okay.
In a little bit.
Okay,
All right. So first I want to introduce the ifs, and then we'll do the else ifs, and then we'll do all that other stuff. So, all right. So now that I have this, let's see if it actually changes anything. So I'm going to run the program again, there you go. Run it. So please enter an age. Age is 9. Hit the enter, and you're under 18. Okay. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to give it an age of 99. This one is you're over 18. I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to give it an age of 18, and you're 18. Okay. So it selects only one of these lines, doesn't show all of them. All right. So what else? What else do I want to tell you? So first of all, this here, whoops, make it a comment. All right. So this piece right here, inside the parentheses, is called a condition. And what is a condition? It is checking to see if something is true or false. Okay, and let me show you how that works. So let's say, for example, I'm going to take out I'll just make age equal to whatever, 0 here. All right, so I don't have to enter things. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some system out println, and in here I'm going to do some things. So these are your conditions. So I'm going to say 3 is less than 4, and then plus parentheses 3 is less than 4. Okay, just like that. And then in here I'm going to say is, and I'm going to run the program, and maybe I should take this out too. Let me run it again. There you go. 3 less than 4 is true, right? So it can actually figure out if something is true or false. So this is my true. Okay, and let's do some other ones. So this is examples of Boolean conditions. Okay, so Boolean is basically another data type, which is similar to an integer, okay, or a float or whatever. But the Boolean data type is either true or false. So if I wanted to, I can create Boolean. There you go. Boolean TF. That's the name of the variable, is equal to true. Okay? And then in here I can do this. And I can say TF is TF. And if I run the program again, you can see TF is true. Okay? In fact, let me just call this one true, T true, then I'm going to have another one. I'm going to call this one F, which is going to be false. Okay, so this is my true, and I'm going to have a false, right? So this is the Boolean data type, right? It's either true or false. F, run it, right? So you can see there, T is true, F is false, and 3 less than 4 is true. Okay, so again, these here, this is an example of condition. Okay, and I'm going to do some other ones. So you can see what other things we can do, what kind of other conditions we can create. So I'm going to do this. 3 is equal to 4. Right? If I run this thing, 3 is equal to 4 is false, right? So this is a false. And then I can do another one. 3 is not equal to 4. Not equal to 4, right? Is that true or false? True, okay. If I run it, 3 is not equal to 4, that's true. Okay, I can do another one. What's the next one? So great, less than or equal. All right, is 3 less than or equal to 4? Yes, okay, good. Run it. Right, it is true. 3 is not equal to 4, but it is less, so this is true. Then I can do another one. So I have the less than or equal, less than, let's do the greater than or equal, or let's do greater. All right, 3 is greater than, 3 is greater than 4. That should be a false. All right, let's do another one. Greater than or equal. Okay, less than or equal, greater than or equal, equal, not equal. Yeah. So this one here was false. This one's going to be true, greater than or equal. Okay, when in doubt, just run the program. So 3 greater than or equal to 4, that's a false. It's not greater than, it's not equal to. Okay, and these here, I guess maybe I should line them up a little bit. There you go, like that. Okay, so these are the conditions. All right, checking to see if something's true or false. And what can figure out if something's true or false? The actual processor. In the CPU, there's an arithmetic logic unit and there's a control unit. The arithmetic logic unit can compare two things to each other. They can see if something's true, if something's less than something, if something is equal to something else, if it's greater than or equal, not equal, those kind of things are built into the processor. Okay, but it can only handle comparison of two things at the same time, right? You can't look at a whole bunch of things and figure out, oh, this is the smallest. No, you can only compare. You only compare them 2 at a time. Okay, the thing in the middle, all right? So this less than, greater than, right? So these are your relational operators. So I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to add your relational operators, right? And what are the relational operators? You have the greater, you have the less than, you have the greater than or equal, you have the less than or equal, you have the not equal, and you have the equal, right? So this is how, using the relational operators, right? We use these to build conditions, right? To basically check to see if something's true or false, you use the relational operators. Okay? So, that's what happens inside my selection thing. Okay? I have some kind of an age which the user enters, but for now I'm just going to keep changing it from inside of the program. Right? And this is my condition. If the condition is true, whatever's inside the curly brackets, right? If the condition is true, whatever is in the curly brackets is executed. Okay? If it isn't true, we don't execute it. Another thing, if you want to, well, I'll leave it like that. So what else do I want to do? So let's say I want to do one condition that is, I want to check a range of things, right? So now what I want to do is, I already checked to see if something's less than, greater than, equal. I can also do not equal, right? But let's not. So I want to check to see, if age is between a certain range of values. Okay? So what's the range of values? Well, let's say for age, want to make sure that the age, or let's say want to make sure the age is between 18 and 21. Okay? There's two different ways to do this. So first way I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, if my age is greater than or equal to 18, okay? And then inside this, I'm going to have a curly bracket. I'm going to have another if my age is less than or equal to 21. And then inside there, I'm going to have my message, system out println. And this one is going to be you are between 18 and 21. Okay? So basically, we're going to check this condition. If the age is bigger than or equal to 18, we're going to go and check the other condition. If the age is less than or equal to 21, then we're going to execute this. So if this happens to happen, the age is greater than or equal to 18 and less than or equal to 21. Okay? So let's check this thing. I'm going to go and I'm going to give it an age of, where's my age? 20. Okay? So now when I run this thing, I'm actually going to get a couple messages, right? Is 20 bigger than 18? Yes, it is, which is why this message shows up. And then this also happens to be true, which is why this thing shows up. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this thing here. I'm just going to move it a little bit higher. Alright. So bottom line is, what I want to do is, now, I don't want to show both of these messages. Right? So I have you're between 18 and 21, and I also have the you're over 18. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to show this message if this is true. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these things ifs, else, ifs. Okay? So I'm going to go in there. This is going to be my if. Then I'm going to do an else if. And then I'm going to do another else if. And then I'm going to do another else if. Okay? And how does the else if work? Well, else if, right? Else if only gets checked when the previous if or else if is false. Okay, so if I check this and it's not less than 18, it's false, then I'm going to go to this one. If this is also false, then I'm going to go to this one. If this is also false, then I'm going to go to this one. Okay, in other words, an if else if chain, right? If else if chain, that's what you could call this, stops at the first if or else if that is true. Okay? And another example that I could give you is, let's say for example I have some kind of a negative, h, right? If I have a negative h, right, I go in there and change my h to like negative 20. The user accidentally typed in a 20. Okay? You don't want to be showing any of these messages. What you would want to do is do something like if my age is less than 0, right? That's a negative age. I'm going to do a system out print line, whoops, that will tell the user that's an invalid age, right? Run it, invalid age. Okay, so if I run this thing, you're going to see you get the invalid age because the age is negative, right? So you're getting this, which is true. because it is true, and then you're getting also the other one underneath it, right? Because if it's negative, it's also less than 18. So what I'm going to do to prevent this one, you're under 18, is I'm just going to make this an else if. Okay, I run it again, and now it just shows me invalid age, right? Because this is true, then none of these other ones are going to get checked. Okay, you can have a whole bunch of, you can have millions of possible else ifs. You don't have to waste the processor's time to think about these things. You just stop it at the first one that's true, basically. Okay, that makes sense. Another thing to do is use logical operators. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this thing on top using the logical operator. So logical operator. Okay, and the logical operator that I'm going to use is ampersand, which is the end. Okay, that's how Java, that's how C, and that's how C++ do their end. Okay, so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say rewrite the above nested if using logical operator end. Okay, and it goes like this. I'm going to say, all right, well, and I'm going to comment this out, right, just for now. Comment it out, and I'm going to do else if my age, let's add extra parentheses, well actually let's just go without it. So if my age is greater than or equal to 18 and my age is less than or equal to 21, then I'm going to show this message. Okay, throw that in there. You're between 18 and 21. Okay, is it going to work the same? Let me go change my age. Maybe I should put the age right here. Let me change it easier. So age is equal to 20. All right, 20. So this message should show me, or this age should show me this particular message. So I go in there, run the thing, and you're between 18 and 21. So you can see that this little and, right, the logical operator and is similar to a nested if. Okay, basically there is a little truth table that I like to create. All right, so I'll call this your truth table for logical operator and. Okay, and it goes like this. So generally speaking, you're going to have something like this, right? You have an if. So you have an if, you have one condition, and you have another condition. Okay? 2. All right, and there's a couple of ways that this could be. It could be true. You can have a true here. Let me write it. So this could be true, and this could be true, right? Or it could be this is true, and this is false. Or it could be this is false, and this is true. Or it could be this is false, and this is false. Okay? So if both of these are true, then this whole thing inside of the parentheses, the two conditions sandwiched in between the and, will evaluates to true. Okay? If I have, all right, if I have a true and a false, false and a true, and a false and a false, all of these are going to evaluate to false. Evaluates to false. Whoops. All right. Copy this thing. So basically, the only time the end is true is when both of the conditions are true. Okay? And that's it. So the practical, it has, I mean, other than using it logically, the same way you would think about things logically, I'm going to grab the door, and I'm going to twist the handle, and I'm going to push the door, and then if the door is unlocked, I'm going to open it, right? That kind of things can be written in your programs. So other than writing just logical thoughts in your programs, making them look intelligent, the practical application, all right, practical application of AND is to see if a value is within an acceptable range of values, like is age between 10 to 20 or something, okay? Or 18 and 21, that's the example we're using. Okay, so if you want to see if something is between these two ranges of values, makes sense to use an AND. Okay, on top of all the other logical things that you could use an AND for. So that's an AND, and it could be used to pretty much replace a nested if. Okay, which way would you use? Well, really, it's a matter of preference. Many ways to do the same thing. Okay, what else? So the next thing that I'm going to do is let's add another age, another invalid age, right? So let's say we're going to do this. We're going to say that invalid ages are anything less than 0 and anything less or greater than 123. Okay? I'm not going to give you my joke about why it's 123 because too many of you have taken my class already and I don't want to bore you. All right? But, okay. So, keep going. So, this was basically if age is less than 0, give this message. And then I'm going to do another if. If my age is greater than 123, I'm also going to do an invalid age. And by the way, I'm going to introduce something real quick. So, yeah, this is going to be system out print invalid, and I'm going to do println age. All right, so what is this going to do? I'm going to show the same exact message that you can see up here, okay, but I'm doing it in two separate lines. And the reason I'm doing it in two separate lines is to show you that basically this is your statement 1 and this is your statement 2, right? So every line that ends with a semicolon is a statement, right? And here I only have one statement.
Can you print out the actual age that the user entered? Like
What's that?
plus? You know,
Yeah, I can do the age. I can do plus age to show the age if I want to. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is basically show you right now that I don't need the curly brackets. Okay, so if I have a single statement, all right, if you have a single statement, the curly brackets are optional. So Java will assume that the statement underneath the if belongs to that if. Okay? But if you have multiple statements, the curly brackets are necessary. Okay? What do you think Java will do if I did this? I get rid of this curly bracket. You think so? Oh, you know so. Well, it won't give you an error. Okay? No. So what will happen is it will actually treat it like this. So if I get rid of the curly brackets of this thing, right? If I was to delete them, what it will actually do is it will think kind of sort of this. Not kind of sort of, but it will do this. That. Okay, so it will assume that the first statement that you have after the if belongs to the if, and then this will not be part of the if. No error.
print that out.
Huh?
Will it print that out?
Oh yeah, this will show every time. All right. And then what is it complaining down here? It's complaining because, see if it says, basically it thinks that you have an if, and then you have something else, and then you're starting with an else if. Okay. It wants an if before it. Okay. So if I take this out, then it's happy. Okay. So curly brackets are necessary if you have multiple statements. If you have a single statement, you do not need the curly brackets. If for some reason you did this, right, it will actually think that just this is part of your if and then the other one isn't. Okay, which is why I kind of, you know, avoid showing these curly brackets in the beginning when I introduce these topics, but whatever, I'm showing you. Okay?
Well, it gives an error if you take away the curly brackets. It'll give you an error on the else if statements, right?
Yeah.
So it won't compile, so it won't run.
Right, but if I didn't have an else if I had an if, then it wouldn't give me a net error. Right? If I do this, I won't get an error.
Oh, okay.
Right? The only reason it's giving me an error is because it does not want me to start with an else if. Just like this gives me an error. Okay, so the first thing in my chain of ifs else is an if. Okay, you cannot start with an else if. Okay, and that by the way is also similar to how this would work. Right? Let's say I have an else if or an else if, right? If I have something in there, and in it I have another one. If I go in there and I make this an else if, it's not going to like it. Why? Because it's basically it's considering that this is a whole new segment of code, and wherever you are, whatever segments of code you are, you have to start with an if. Okay, so we're inside the curly brackets of this if. Fresh start. We need to start with an if first. I can have an else if after that, no problem, but I can't start with an if first. Okay, so that's important. And let's say what else? So I'm gonna turn them back into else ifs. All right, if, else if. Okay, now this leads me to the next thing, which is if I have two things showing, two ifs that are showing the same exact thing, right? I'm getting an invalid H here, and then I'm getting another invalid H there. Okay? And by the way, we can test it if you want to see. So let's go 123, 144. All right, I'm going to run it. So that's an invalid H, which is this one. All right? And if I change this thing to a negative 144, then I'm going to get this error message. And there you go. But I'm also getting the you're under 18. Okay, so why is that happening? That's actually an interesting thing. So why is this showing up? If I have an if, and then another if, and then an else if, what's going on there? My question is, I have this thing telling me that it's invalid H when it's a negative, and I'm also getting this thing here, age is less than 18, you're under 18 showing up.
Because the value that you selected is less than 18, so it's giving you that printout statement that says you are under 18.
I know, but
even though it's negative.
okay, so yeah. Correct. Okay, so the issue is it checks to see if this is true, and it shows you this message. Then it checks to see if this is true. It's false. So it continues and it goes and it checks this other one. So how can I fix this section of code so that my message you're under 18 doesn't show up at all?
I would change the second one to an else if.
Yep.
Change the first one to an or.
Okay, we'll do the or in a second. So if I wanted to fix it, right, I just say else if. So then how is it going to be different? It's going to check to see if this is true. Is it true? Yes, negative 144, it's true. So stops here, right? None of these other ones are going to get checked. But if I had it as an if, what happens is it checks to see if this is true. It's true, shows you something, then it checks the next one. It's false. Then it goes on to check the next one, right, etc., etc., etc. So if you wanted to stop at the first thing that's true, make them else ifs. Okay, good. So the next thing is going to the point of where basically both of these things show the same message, right? So instead of using the same message, instead of using two separate ifs, right, or if and an else if, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing out, comment it, right, and I'm going to say here rewrite the above using logical operator or. That's the or in C and C++ and Java. Okay? So it will go like this. So if my age is less than 0, right, or my age is greater than 123, then I can show this message. Well, let's go with that first one. Actually, I'll go with this. Okay? And let's check it, right? So first negative age should be an invalid, right? Invalid age. Give it a positive age, 144. Run it, and it's also invalid age. Okay, so just like I did my little truth table for the logical operator end, I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, so this is a logical operator or, right? Practical application of or is to see if a value is outside of an acceptable range of values. Like if the age is less than 0, right? Less than 0. Or greater than 123. Okay? Truth table for logical operator. Or, right? You have an or in the middle, and this was if age is less than 0 or age is greater than 123, right? So you have one condition, you have another condition, and the possible arrangements of these are basically same thing, right? You can have a true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Except this thing will evaluate true as long as either one or both of these are true, right? So this is going to be true, this is going to be true. The only time the or evaluates to false is when both of these are false. Same like the other languages. Okay? And again, what is the practical application of this other than writing logical statements in your code? Well, check to see if something's outside of an acceptable range of values. Okay? So that's pretty much all I want to tell you about selection. So you have your relational operators, you have your Boolean data type, which is true or false. You have conditions, which is how we check to see if something's true or false. All right, you basically have two variables or two numbers, and you're comparing them to each other. The processor, the arithmetic logic unit, takes care of that. And we use those to create ifs, which is how we do selection, right? If some kind of a condition or conditions are true, then you execute whatever's inside of the curly brackets. And if you have, I guess I lost my example, but there you go. If you have a single statement, you do not need the curly brackets. If you have multiple statements, you need curly brackets. Okay? So actually, I forgot to tell you one more thing. So I got to tell you about the else. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way at the top. Right here. So I'm going to say, all right, so if my age is less than 0, I'm going to say system out println age is negative. Okay? And then I'm going to do another one. Just look at my other stuff under. Okay, and then I'm going to have another one. I'm going to say else. And then in the else, I'm going to have some curly brackets. And I'm going to say this thing. Age is 0. No ln. So no new line. Is 0 or a positive value. Okay? And again, if I have a single statement, I don't need the curly brackets. Since I have multiple statements, I need the curly brackets. What is an else? Well, it's similar to an else if. Okay? One difference. So the else if, right? The else if gets checked. Again, where's this thing? So one more time, let me write it. So else if gets checked when the previous if or else if is false. Okay? Well, similarly, the else happens automatically when the preceding, if I can spell it, I did, the preceding if or else if is false, right? We don't have a condition for it, right? So don't tempt yourself to do like age is equal to 0. No good, right? It doesn't like it. It will give you an error. Why? Because the else cannot have a condition. Okay? The else cannot have a condition. Okay? So now you know an if, now you know an else. You could put the else usually all the way at the end, right? If all these other things are not true, then something else happens. Okay? That's something you can do. Something you should not do is putting semicolons after your ifs. Alright, so if I go in there and I do this, right, it is actually not going to give you an error, but well, actually gives you an error after that. Right? Why is that? Because as soon as you do this, as soon as you put a semicolon after an if, it's basically a do nothing if. It's the same as if you were to do this. Okay? That's the same thing in C++. Okay? So Java inherited C++'s problems, if you want to say that. So yeah, do not put a semicolon after an if. Okay? Same thing with an else. None of these will work if you have a semicolon after them. Okay? And the worst thing is that it will not generate an error a lot of the times. Like if I put this, and let's say maybe here. Nah, it's kind of, let me put it at the end. There. Right? If I put it all the way at the end, you will not notice a whole lot of difference in your code, but then when you run the program, it doesn't work, or it works weird. It doesn't work all the time. Okay? So don't put semicolons after the ifs or else or any of those. Okay? So now you know about an if, you know about an else, you know about an if chain, you know about the logical operator or, you know about the logical operator and, you know about nested ifs, right? You know when to put the curly brackets and when not to put the curly brackets, right? And by the way, if I wanted to, I can rewrite this thing without any of the curly brackets, right? If I wanted to, I can just grab this whole thing, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. And now my code is cleaner. Right? Why is that? Well, inside this if, there's only one thing, which is this other if. And inside of this if, there's only one thing, which is this if. I mean, this statement. Right? So I don't need the curly brackets if I wanted to clean up my code. But if you feel like putting the curly brackets, I encourage you to do that. More power to you. No big deal. Okay? Indentation, unlike Python, makes no difference. So don't think that if I have something like this, if I get rid of the curly brackets here, and I have something like that, that somehow that magically will make my second statement be inside of the if. No, it will just put the curly brackets right around this thing, like nobody's business. Okay. And again, every else if or an if should be preceded by an if or an else if, and if it isn't, like I did here, if I take this out, you get some kind of an error. Okay? Alright, that's about all I want to say. Now let's have a look at
Do they have like exclusive or exclusive? And that's usually not used.
we're not going to use any of that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So batch files, I gotta fix that. I gotta update it. Okay. So couple of assignments this week. Nothing hard. I will I'll update these two so that if somebody doesn't have the book, they can fix it. I might actually put in the work to fix this class so it doesn't need a textbook by the end of this semester.
I'm still waiting for mine from Australia.
You still waiting for yours from Australia?
It was like so much cheaper on it. It's like $12. Everywhere else like 130.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The one that I bought that was the wrong one was 60.
Let's see. Honestly, the reason I had been using this book for a long time is because it was like literally $5 for the longest time, and then all of a sudden I think they stopped publishing them or whatever. I don't know what the deal is.
Somewhere like $200 on eBay.
That's ridiculous. Hold on. Yeah, that's the reason why I'm gonna get rid of the textbook. If they want to do that rip-off scheme, no. Hold on, let me do this. Copy Java. Sheesh. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, this is probably gonna be the last semester I use this.
Custom reviews.
Yeah, I love the reviews. I don't care. I like the book. I like the book. Okay.
This is for someone who really wants to learn it.
No, I think this is if you don't know programming and you read this book as your first book, like Introduction to Programming, it might maybe not make sense. But I've had the experience that if you have had programming, it makes a whole lot of sense. And if you follow it and you read through it and type up all the examples, it's good. But yeah, so
You might have to go.
I am gonna go and rework all of these assignments so that people in the future don't get to be ripped off. I don't like, if you take my class, the only cost associated with my class should be tuition or whatever. That's it. I don't want you to pay $100 for a book. That's ridiculous. Okay, especially not for a book that's like 10 years old. There's a reason I was using this. I was actually thinking about buying a whole stack of them and just like giving them to students cheaper, but no.
Upload it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, upload it. Scan it. Get in trouble. No. Mm-mm. Okay, so that's basically all I wanted to tell you. Actually, wait, hold on. Let's look at this stuff real quick. What the book has to say. Right? Oh, there you go. Yeah, this is your relational operators, the conditions, the logical operators, the ifs and elses, the nested ifs, the if-else chain. Oh, there's a switch also. I'm totally going to skip the switch, okay? Because I don't care about a switch much, to be honest with you. You could use a switch the same way that you could use an if-else-if chain, which is why Python got rid of the switch. They said, who cares about a switch? We can use an if-else-if, right? And honestly, I haven't found much use for a switch. It's just, to me, it's equally easy to use an if and else if chain than it is to use a switch. So how does the switch work? Just so you know, it's basically, so see this thing here where we have age is equal to 10, age is equal to 11, and 12, etc. Well, the switch works like this. You say switch, parentheses, some variable name, and then case 10. So case 10 is when it's equal to 10. Case 11 is when age is equal to 11. You execute whatever's in here. And then if you want to stop here, you put a break. And otherwise, if you do not have the break, it will go on and will do all the other ones underneath it. Okay? And the default is the same as having a final else at the end. So if you have an if, else if, else if, else if, else, that is the same thing as having something like this. Okay? Why would you use a switch? I wouldn't. I don't. Okay? You can live your life without a switch, I think. And that's it. So this is your summary for Chapter 5. You can read the book for more information. And that is all I have. Huh?
Exercise 5.4. This is a switch statement. Do you want us to?
Yeah, use the switch. Yeah, just use the example so you get some practice with switch.
Okay.
All right, but honestly, in reality, you can live your whole life without a switch. But there might be some programs out there that use a switch, and you want to understand how the switch works. There you go. Get yourself some switch experience. Okay, so that was short, way shorter than normal. I'm gonna stop here and upload this stuff for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Come see me in my office. You know the drill.